this week's episode, we take a look at His Excellency's choices in his 40-plus days in office and how they've affected the business world. We also get to sit down with an economist, Lewis Maganga. But before all that, let's take a look at stories around this conversation that have been collected by TV47's top reporters. If you thought the current cost of living is unbearable, then brace yourself for tougher times ahead as the government insists that there will be no immediate intervention to alleviate millions of Kenyans from the yoke of the price of unga and other day-to-day commodities.
We want a long-term solution. We don't want a quick fix. Trying to subsidize consumption is foolish. It's not sustainable.
More than a month after taking over the reins of power on the promise to reduce the cost of living, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua now says that Kenyans will have to wait for their long-term interventions to work, which include produce from the subsidized fertilizer being distributed. This despite the current drought situation, which the weatherman says is not likely to come to an end soon.
As the Kenya Kwanza government, we remain committed to the agricultural reforms for increased productivity of all the sectors. Any hope Kenyans had on the end of their troubles was buried after the Agriculture Cabinet nominee Mithika Linturi said the only intervention would be a subsidy, which the government has stopped.
The price of unga, Mr. Speaker, I don't think will also come down immediately.
Insisting that have the option of embracing GMO foods.
We need to let our people die or adopting GMO.
They say the near-nil reprieve in the price of fuel did not help them in any way, saying that they want intervention and now.
Unga walikuwa wana expect itashuka chini kidogo. Unga haijashuka. Mafuta bado waliteremsha na shilingi moja, lakini wanasema bado mafuta ilishuka.
Kwa Kenya tunaumia, tuna struggle. Kuweka chakula kwa meza imekuwa kazi ngumu jamani.
At the moment, a 2-kilogram packet of maize flour costs upwards of 200 shillings, which is out of reach of many Kenyans. Flora Limuki, TV47.
From the Deputy Speaker and go straight to answer the questions that he...
The debate on the way forward on the establishment of the 50 billion shillings Hustler Fund is leaving more questions than answers, with the government appearing unclear on the structure of the fund, which was a key campaign pledge. Speaking during his vetting for the position of Cabinet Secretary for Cooperatives and SMEs, Simon Chelugui stated that the Hustler Fund can only be accessed 3 months after its launch.
A hustler is not a poor man. A hustler is a hard-working Kenyan who toils, wakes up very early in the morning to mind his business. They wake up at 4. They buy their wares, they stock their wares, they sell their wares, they repay their loans. And they all desire a better life.
This is against the president's pledge of having the fund up and running by December 1st. Another issue that came out is on the interest rate of the fund, with the Chelugui hinting that it could hit a maximum of at least 9%.
Pay interest, there's a cost of administration of the fund. We want to send officers to check. We want the intermediaries to participate, to recover and to lend, to provide advisory services as the last mile of delivery of this money. So what I can assure the country is this fund will be below 10%. And we are talking between around 9 and we're still thinking of bringing it down, or those are discussions going on. It's not yet clear.
This is in sharp departure from the campaign talk that the fund would be a zero interest on top of placing conditions for the would-be beneficiaries. In his Mashujaa Day speech on Thursday, Dr. Ruto indicated that hustlers will have to participate in a pensions program in order to access cheap credit.
No citizen will be excluded from the credit system. They will therefore be eligible to access credit as they work their way into paying their loans. I will launch this fund credit and savings product on the 1st of December.
Other matters that came to the fore include anchoring the fund within the law and its potential clash with other affirmative action funds like the Uwezo, Women and the Youth funds, some of which have zero interest.
And this Uwezo fund concept, which they are saying in their website, by then Jubilee government, that it was a bottom-up approach, never succeeded. How will a fund which will have an interest, however small it is, which is going to be refunded, help somebody to start a business? How will you incubate a startup using that kind of money?
So this practice needs to be inculcated at the beginning so that you pay interest. There's a cost of administration of the fund. We want to send officers to check. We want the intermediaries to participate, to recover and to lend, to provide advisory services as the last mile of delivery of this money.
This comes even as data from the Central Bank of Kenya shows the cost of loans from commercial banks has hit 33-month high due to the increase in the base lending rate. The rate was 12.38% by August, which is the highest rate since November 2019. This development will see banks charge even more for loans. Its direct implication and mechanisms to recover the loaned funds remain clear, with Chelugui hinting at the possible involvement of the police.
Involvement of chiefs and county and police as asked by the Deputy Speaker. And I want to...
the brutality of the Kanjos.
Yes.
I think that's what she's asking.
We will collaborate with all the stakeholders. This is a government intervention, and we will want to rally everybody alongside this plan. So the police, the county governments, and the chiefs are part and parcel of this program. Thank you.
The realities of the intricate balance of governing the country are settling in as the president navigates tough economic times. Kenyans shocked by the cost of living and ambitious campaign pledges that require hundreds of billions of shillings. Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
Hali ya kimapato ya watu wa huku iko chini, watu wanahangaika kusurvive, na wengi wao hata kama wanaenda kivibarua zile za kulipwa malipo ya chini sana. Kwa hivyo wengi wao wanaomba kwamba serikali iweke mikakati ambayo inaweza fanya maisha yao iwe ya juu.
Maisha ya sasa hii ni ngumu sana. Kusema kweli, ukienda na 200 urudi na kitu. Unabai unga, hakuna mboga. Maisha ya sasa hii ni ngumu sana kuliko zamani.
Unapata asubuhi, kama mimi watoto wangu wanaenda asubuhi shule, so wanakunywa breakfast kwa nyumba, lunch inapita hivyo, usiku ndio saa tujue tutapata hiyo ya kukula.
My name is Lewis Maganga. I'm an economic researcher at the Progressive African Librarians and Information Activists Group. I'm very glad to be here today. Yeah, so foremost, of course, the drop by 1 shilling by EPRA deserves such kind of reaction from Kenyans, because for Kenyans, they feel the drop is going to be negligible in terms of how this is going to affect the prices of public transport as well as private transport, as well as the prices of all other commodities that usually depend on petroleum, to conduct the activities. And yes, Kenyans have a right to react that way, because that's exactly what the effect is going to be. However, there is a reason to be optimistic, because as far as the international fuel price situation is looking like, there is going to be a general decrease in the prices of fuel, but this is going to take time, It's going to take several months. So we could say by the end of the year, there's going to be a drop. However, the drop in prices that EPRA has released by 1 shilling is not going to have any significant effect on the economy, on the prices of public transport as it is, and of course on the end product of those commodities which require transportation from one place to another, and therefore the effect is negligible. From an economic point of view, at least in the short term, the effect is negligible.
You are watching TV47, the home of untold stories.
This is Doha, this is Qatar. We come together tonight.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie.
Yeah, so first of all, the important thing that Kenyans should understand is why subsidies. Subsidies are part of what is known as government interventions in the economy, and usually government interventions are called for whenever we have what is called market failure, whenever we feel the forces of the market as they are not yielding the results that would translate into that equilibrium point where Kenyans want to be. So that's why there is government interventions from time to time, and subsidies are one of the ways in which the government intervenes. The subsidies on production versus consumption, well, obviously, when you subsidize production, what this translates to is a lowering of the costs of production, and naturally there is going to be a decrease in the prices of the end product of the commodities that are produced by these producers. However, it is not always the case, also it does not necessarily have to translate to a lowering of the end product, and therefore that's why sometimes it is advisable that the government does subsidize consumption as well. So recently, of course, President Ruto talked about how what is going to be the focus is the subsidization of production, specifically fertilizer, which of course is going to have a positive impact in the prices of the end product. However, I feel more needs to be done. We still have to subsidize consumption, because even when you talk about fertilizer, well, fertilizer is being consumed by farmers as they produce, as they add it onto the factors of production that would therefore help in the process of growing maize and all these other farm products that are produced by farmers. So but the consumption that's going on there is what is called productive consumption. So you're consuming fertilizer, but in the process of producing something else, right? So it's still consumption. So do you see? So it is important that the government also subsidizes consumption, especially on commodities that are considered essential. When you talk about maize, for instance, maize flour reaching 250 shillings, retailing at 250 shillings, that's a crisis. That means there is a problem in the market. And, when Kenyans are hungry, that's dangerous for the economy and for the country generally. So I feel, yes, it is good for the government to subsidize fertilizer, to subsidize the factors of production, but certain special circumstances demand that we subsidize consumption as well, especially because what people are calling for subsidization is what is essential. Yeah. So first of all, it's always a good thing when more people have more access to credit, because what this means is that demand goes up. You know, if you have access to credit, then it is possible for you to operate your small businesses, considering the fact that 80% of people who are employed in Kenya are employed in the informal sector. So, you know, that means these are people who continuously need credit in order to expand their businesses and in order to run the businesses that they have. So, of course, it's always a good thing when you have more Kenyans having access to credit. However, what has not been clear yet is how this is going to be effected. Because are we saying that the government is going to pay for, you know, the loans that have not been paid, because these people have been blacklisted because they're loans that have not been paid yet, you know? And being blacklisted means that you have to clear with your creditor before you can access another loan. So is the government going to pay to clear these debts before these people are unlisted from the CRB list? So that is not yet clear. But what is important for Kenyans to understand is that if we want to stimulate lenders to lend more to the Kenyan people, then of course there has to be certain assurances. The risk of unlisting people is that you might create a situation where the lenders do not feel confident in lending to the Kenyan people. And if they don't feel confident, then the risk for them goes up. When the risk goes up, then that means the cost of borrowing goes up. Because if I was giving you a loan at 14%, now that I am not sure you will pay it, then I would want to increase the interest rate that I'm charging you, right? So the cost of borrowing goes up. And if the cost of borrowing goes up, then less Kenyans can access credit. And if less Kenyans can access credit, then the entire thing, what was the point, you know? It might be counterproductive. So these are things that we have to take into consideration. It's a good thing for more Kenyans to access credit, but it has to consider, the entire process has to consider all those factors so that these lenders do not feel it is too risky for them to lend, because the effect would be counterproductive in the long run. Yes. Yes. So I think first of all, that would be a very, very good thing. The entire point of Hustler Fund loaning people at single-digit interest rate, that is going to be, you know, in the long run, have very, very positive effects to the economy, because that would mean SMEs are going to have more capital, more functioning capital, and it's going to have, you know, a very, very good effect. Like we said, 80% of Kenyans who are employed in the informal sector, and this is a sector that continuously needs to advance what is called productive forces. So you need to acquire new tools for production, you need to expand, you need to employ even more people if you have that small business that you're running. So definitely this is going to have a positive effect in the economy. So I think Kenyans, you know, can of course look forward to that. But of course, what we can say is that Kenyans need to embed themselves into financial institutions, so that these funds, you know, can be easily availed to them. You know? Because sometimes you'd find that, you know, many businesses are really not embedded in financial institutions. They do not have bank accounts, you know, they do not have places where they can access credit. I think this would be an opportunity for them to do so. And, you know, through that, it would be possible for them to access the funding, and these financial institutions can also do the due diligence in order to assess, the credit worthiness of these businesses which want to get the funding. So Kenyans, I think this is a thing to look forward to. Luckily for us, we have mechanisms through which financial institutions are regulated and through which whatever happens in these financial institutions is made very, very clear. So again, the government would not necessarily have the capacity to directly fund those SMEs or those businesses, because even President Ruto talked about this hustler fund being channeled through SACCOs, cooperatives. These are what are known as non-bank financial institutions. So again, when these small businesses have embedded themselves into these SACCOs and into these financial institutions, even regular banks, then it becomes easy for the funding to be traced, for the entire channel to be traced. And again, the financial institutions will have the capacity or the responsibility to do what is called due diligence, because they have to assess your credit worthiness. If you have a small business and if this business deposits 1,000 bob at the end of every single day, then the financial institution knows your capacity. They know exactly how to channel the funding to you, and they know your credit worthiness. They know your capacity. So therefore, I think that would help. It would formalize the whole thing. I don't think there's any worry about how the financial institutions would handle the whole thing, because they're experts in that matter and they're regulated by central bank.